Well, all right, friends. Welcome into the Salt City Hoops live postcast and beer. I am your host, Mark Pereira. We're having a great time tonight. I'm trying to get our wings together. We're flapping in. We're trying to figure out how we're going to do this year with Salt City Hoops. And second game of the year, it always comes with do we remember how to get the stream going? We got the Twitter Spaces going. We got YouTube Live going. The Twitter notifications are flying fast, and I'm just so excited to be here. And I was hoping that we got a win earlier in the season than later, so as we start getting the live chats going, we had stuff to talk about. We started this whole live postcast with just this was my idea when we're just all sitting around, and after a game we're all kind of yelling at each other on Twitter, both good and bad. And I was like, we gotta have a place to hang out. So it started out with Twitter Spaces, and then we did a YouTube show. And if you're on YouTube and you want to just do something easier on your phone, we got Twitter Spaces. If you're on Twitter Spaces and you want to see my ugly face and my jazz posters in the back, you can come join that. You can chat. You can request to speak. This is a live open cast. And I always like to say that this is the live postcast and beer. I always bring a new craft beer for every single game, and this time we're drinking. It's still pumpkin season, still fall season. This is going to be a Imperial Pumpkin Ale from my favorite brewery, Four Noses. This is legitimately my favorite beer of all time, and I think this is no NBA title, but what greater occasion than a great Jazz victory to bust open. I don't have a glass handy, but this is a great orange can from Four Noses, 7.5%. I've had a couple of these tonight. It's a Friday night. We're having a good time. So welcome into the Salt City Hoops live postcast and beer. Like I said, I'm Mark Pereira. So thrilled to be here for a win. We did this the other night on a loss, trying to get our bearings together, and just like the Jazz, we kind of had a slow welcome to the postcast. Now we're here. Now we're live. Now we got a great victory to talk about. Game ball for me goes to Lowry Markkanen. Just a fabulous game, wire to wire. Of course, the ending heroics of Jordan Clarkson on both ends of the court. Who would have thought I would have had to say that? Just fabulous defense from him late on Kawhi Leonard to force a very difficult three-point attempt. That immediately followed a wonderful three-point shot that he may or may not have even gotten fouled on. So that three-point shot put the Jazz up 2 points, and then that great defense forced a very, very difficult Kawhi Leonard three-pointer. Russell Westbrook did get the offensive rebound, but he was forced to take a tough mid-range shot that I don't even think hit rim. So just a fabulous, fabulous way to finish out this night. I'm so happy. This is great. So I'll say it just one more time for everyone who's trickling in here. This is the Salt City Hoops live postcast and beer. I'm Mark. We're going to talk about the Jazz win. We're going to get into the advanced stats. We're going to get into the plays that you love, the plays that I loved. We'll talk about every player on the team. We'll bounce around the NBA. We'll see the scores that are going on. And we're going to talk maybe a little fantasy, maybe a little gambling, but this is going to be a Jazz-centric postcast, and maybe we'll put it in podcast feeds as we get a little bit more established here. But for now, we're going to talk about this win. So, my favorite thing about this win is just showing that the Jazz are going to be this hard-playing, competitive team that was seemingly lost 2 nights ago. 2 nights ago, I was, and I've been very much on record with my writing for Salt City Hoops. I've written that I've been nervous about the quality of this team. That the over/under was set at 35 wins, fringe play-in contender, but a team that you have to care about. And I said, I don't know, guys. There isn't a lot of passing on this team, and there isn't a lot of defense on this team. Namely because I wasn't sure that Walker Kessler was quite ready to be that one-man defense that we were so used to. And that first night, I hated that I was right. But worse than losing against a quality opponent, the energy for the Jazz also seemed to be a little bit lacking. And there was the defense, especially. I think they were trying to figure some things out. I kind of washed up Wednesday thinking that the Kings are probably just the worst team for a team trying to figure out what they are defensively to play. Like, the Kings are a very sophisticated offense and really made Utah's defense a challenge. And when you're playing a lot of young players like Keontae George and a lot of new defensive strategies with Walker Kessler only playing 22 minutes, it was a tough matchup for them. The Clippers are a little bit easier to figure out. Like, they have better talent than the Kings, maybe when they're full strength, with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George as the two best players if you match them up against the Kings, but they're a little bit more easier to figure out. And I think you saw that today with the defense. Definitely some lapses defensively. I got to pull up my stats here. We'll talk about it in a second, but the Clippers definitely had a successful offensive day. But the Jazz got punched in the mouth defensively against the Kings, and they kind of took a day to figure out, hey, here's what went wrong. I think Will Hardy is a fantastic film coach. Going today, you prepare for a tough opponent against two great players who both had great games personally. 36 for Paul George, 25 for Kawhi Leonard. Both of them very, very, very efficient. Paul George on his way to 15 free throws. Almost all of them deserved, by the way. Paul George is a great foul drawer. Paul George is going to draw some bullshit fouls. I could have quibbled with 4 of his free throws, but that's part of Paul George's game. Kawhi Leonard bitched about not getting free throws the whole game, but hey, he got one very, very poor one call against Utah, so it kind of all washed out in the end, maybe. And the Jazz defense was a little bit more adequate today. It's still below average, but it figured it out. And then on the offensive end, they're still trying to figure out who are ball handlers, who is playing with whom. I think they still played their guards the same amount of minutes relatively among each other than they did the night before. You saw fewer minutes for Agbaji, fewer minutes for George, more minutes for Horton Tucker, but I do think that was more of like game flow. I don't think we can attribute that to just be like, oh, Horton Tucker got a bunch more minutes. I mean, we're talking about a handful of minutes here, a handful of minutes there. But what Hardy did do is change around what guards were playing with whom, what forwards were playing with what guards. They're still trying to figure that out, and that can be a real challenge offensively. And Lauri Markkanen is a largely dependent threat who needs great passing. I know longtime listeners of this postcast are sick of me saying dependent threat, but he is still at this point. The ball handling needs to be there, the passing needs to be there, and there's turnovers and fouls, and it can be really, really difficult if the Jazz ball handlers are not effectively running an offense. And I think the play set designs were run really, really, really well tonight. I don't think that the ad hoc playmaking was really all up to snuff. But you did see the ball handlers have a little bit more effective on actual play calls, getting the ball to Markkanen when it was needed. And so you ended up with a pretty decent offensive day. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a 120-118 victory, Jazz over the Clippers. We're going to talk about some of the stats here once I get all logged in here to what we are doing tonight. So welcome in. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to drop a comment. Jeremy Jensen's in a fantasy league with me, and he says, hey, slow it down, you're killing me. And then he realizes I'm not playing him in fantasy this week, but that does make me want to check out what we got going on. We'll talk about stat lines and everything. I think John Collins went over on both of his lines tonight, which I think his over-under was like 11 points and 5 rebounds, and he's crushed that for the first 2 nights. Only 13 points today, but 5 rebounds. I mean, he's had a double-double in both games, so that's been pretty great. Let's see what else we got going on here to bring up before we get into the initial stuff. I am setting up I got a new computer as well, so I was rapidly plugging in all my docs and everything with the webcam and everything right before here. So hopefully everything is going great. I hope you're all having a great night. We're going to talk some Jazz basketball. Always remember, you can drop a comment. If you're in Spaces, you can ask to speak. I will take all comments. We'll talk about everything today. I gotta take a sip. I always do this. I always crack open a beer and forget to take a few sips. So, bringing up the stats here, I'm going to open up cleaning the glass as well. The rebounding was terrific for the Jazz. A little bit inflated by a few of the tip drills that happened today, but you had Markkanen with 5 offensive rebounds. You may recall he had that tip drill late where he got 3 of his own offensive rebounds to finally get in the basket. He was having a very efficient night up to that point. He was at one point 11 of 19, a very efficient field goal night, 6 of 6 from the free throw, and then he missed those 3 offensive rebound putbacks and finally got one. And so he ends up 12 of 23 with 5 offensive rebounds. John Collins had 5 offensive rebounds of his own. Kelly Olynyk, a famously poor rebounder, had 3 offensive rebounds of his own. And the Jazz, for once, prevented, and this is actually looking to be so far promising just in the effort. I think John Collins is a big part of this. Last year, the Jazz's biggest problem, maybe not their biggest problem that ended up in poor results, but something that is very annoying to watch as a fan is watching the Jazz give up offensive rebounds over and over and over again. And this year so far, they're actually giving up a very normal amount of offensive rebounds. It was a perfectly average amount 2 nights ago, and this year was positively good. They only gave up 6 offensive rebounds today, 3 of them to Kawhi Leonard, which were, if I'm recalling, 2 of them were a little bit random in their effect. So it's great to see that the rebounding seems to be good, especially with John Collins getting his own 12 total rebounds. So you end up with 12 rebounds from Collins and 12 rebounds from Markkanen, and the rebounding throughout seemed pretty good. Cameron asked, give some thoughts on Kessler. I think Kessler with 4 rebounds is also useful. We're going to talk about Kessler's minutes in a moment. He had 22 minutes the first night, and only 21 minutes now. It's been very, very, very curious to see him playing so few minutes, but if you watch how the rotation is shaking out, it's kind of like, would you rather have Kessler in for whom at any given point? And sometimes it's like the player you would like on the bench is someone like Ochai Agbaji, right? Because you need X amount of ball handling out there, and the Jazz just they don't have a top-tier playmaking guard, but they got 5 guards that kind of all need to play at some sort of C+, B- level, all the way from Jordan Clarkson all the way down to Chris Dunn. And so if those guys are all kind of getting somewhere between 15 and 25 minutes, and Clarkson in particular, you want him over 30 because he is such a great engine of offense, even if it's not passing distribution offense, although he did have 6 assists today. I want to really call that out today. I thought his game was very balanced today, offensively, defensively, and he, only shooting 4 of 13, Clarkson did, but he had a great game. So you start thinking like, all right, who do I put? Who do we put in place for Kessler? And it always ends up being someone like Chris Dunn at the end of the day. And so you end up with Kessler only playing 21 minutes. Now, I think he's probably good enough that he needs to play more minutes. But the Jazz were also playing a situation where the Clippers were playing some smaller lineups today. Zubats and Plumlee combined for 31 minutes today. So Zubats played 19 minutes. Mason Plumlee played 12 minutes today. So if you're thinking like, okay, who is Kessler able to guard here? I mean, it's 31 minutes of those guys. Kessler was out there for almost all of them, so you're really only playing 10 minutes of them playing a traditional center without Kessler out there, and they were trying to pull the old Gobert trick of spacing the floor with Nicola Batum at center and saying, all right, Jazz, like if you want to have a paint protector just standing out there, we're going to space you out and make him inefficient. And Will Hardy immediately responded by saying, all right, well, I got other guys to do it. I got Kelly Olynyk, who's a lot more mobile, I got John Collins, who is a lot more mobile. Lauri Markkanen is out there for a lot of other obvious reasons. And, oh, by the way, I have these bevy of guard small forward types like Horton Tucker and Agbaji that I can throw at you if you're going to deploy those kinds of lineups. So he's playing fine. I don't have an issue with how Kessler is playing. He shot and made a 3 today. He was 1 of 2 from 3 today. His offense is fine. His defense is fine. He didn't commit a foul today. He was a +6 in his 21 minutes. I was saying at the beginning of the season that I don't think you can trust Walker Kessler to immediately become this 35-minute-a-game player. I had him slated for 28, so I didn't think it was going to be this low. I am surprised when you see situations like Kelly Olynyk with 27 minutes and Horton Tucker with 27 minutes. But we're really talking about a handful of minutes here and there, but there are very much wide stretches of the game where Kessler isn't even at the scorer's table. And I think that's interesting. And maybe it could be because that a player like Keontae George, who very rarely has played with Kessler, I think he played a few minutes with him today. I think he played 0 minutes with Kessler the night before. Maybe a couple minutes. I have to check that. But Keontae George and Walker Kessler are often not sharing the court together. Maybe it's about learning how to play with a guy like Walker Kessler, right? Where it might be a little easier to have the fluidity and passing of an experience of a John Collins and Kelly Olynyk out there. So I don't really have an issue with how Kessler is playing. It's more about what is the lineup situation looking like out there. I just thought he had a pretty I thought he had a pretty nice game. I'm trying to open up some other stats here to chat about. Let's see if I can get logged in here. I cannot seem to open up a different stats site that I'm trying to do. Anyways, doesn't matter. Let's talk about everything else. Have a sip of beer. Welcome in Salt City Hoops, live postcast and beer. Love that you're here. My name is Mark. We've got our first win of the season, friends. So let's do a quick rundown of I've been kind of bouncing around the minutes and the performances here. Let's do a quick summary of that, of the box score stats before we get into some of the more advanced stats that we got about rebounding and efficiency and that sort of thing. It's always hard to like nail down exactly the good and the bad with box score stats, but we can start with it. So, like I said, Markkanen, he's the star of the game. 35 points, 12 of 23 from the field, 5 of 13 from 3. I think it's just terrific that Markkanen is able to get up 13 threes. A lot of them contested, but a lot of them he was going for it though. That's just a very, very healthy amount of three-point attempts. 41 total three-point attempts for the Jazz. They made 16 of them, 39% from three. Markkanen with 12 rebounds, obviously buoyed with those 5 offensive rebounds, 3 of them coming in that tip drill late. He finishes a +11. 3 assists from Markkanen. I don't recall the passes there as being particularly relevant, but 3 assists is more than his usual 1 or 0. 0 steals, 0 blocks. Next guy up in minutes was John Collins. I did not expect John Collins to be playing this many minutes. Not that he's not good, I just was with the forward glut, and I know that Hardy wants to Kelly Olynyk out there as much as possible. I'm surprised that John Collins is up over 30 minutes. And I think a lot of Walker Kessler I think they have preferred John Collins out there in some of these faster matchups against a small Clippers team and a fast Kings team. And given that I do think Kessler could have matched up with Sabonis a little bit, but Kessler was having a big problem with the speed of the Kings on Wednesday, and that might have been something that Collins helped out with. So this could be wildly different the next game, too. This is only a sample size of 2 games, but still, John Collins is very much a heavy part of the rotation, playing with a lot of the different guard lineups that they've tried to do. He was only 4 of 11 today, but that was sunk by being only 1 of 5 from 3. He had a lot of open opportunities that just weren't going in. 4 of 4 from the free throw line, so if he has a balanced out 3-point game, he ends up having a decent efficiency day. 12 rebounds, again, 5 offensive rebounds, 1 nasty block on Ivica Zubac today. That was great to see. 4 fouls, he was a -4 today. Third leading player in minutes, Jordan Clarkson, the hero at the end of the game. JC is a vibe, our hero of the night. And if it wasn't for Lauri Markkanen's just fantastic performance today, you would say that he was the star of the game. Jordan Clarkson hits that 3-pointer late where he almost got, they did not call a foul, but he fell down, so it kind of looked like he might have he gotten fouled. But he had 13 points, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds today. And let the record show, just stunning defense on Kawhi Leonard, isolation late. The Clippers are down 2, giving the ball in Kawhi Leonard's hand to walk down Jordan Clarkson. This wasn't a switch situation. The Jazz intentionally had Jordan Clarkson out there. I think Chris Dunn was also on the floor, and it was and Chris Dunn didn't have a great defensive game. Actually, no, Chris Dunn fouled out, so I think it must have been Horton Tucker that was out there. I think they finished, and if someone wants to correct me, I will always be corrected as we do this live. They finished with Collins, Markkanen, Olynyk, Clarkson, and Horton Tucker, I believe, instead of Chris Dunn because Chris Dunn came in for Horton Tucker late in the fourth quarter, and so we thought that Chris Dunn was going to finish the game, and then he fouled out late. But Kawhi Leonard walks down Jordan Clarkson to take in isolation possession to either tie the game, they're down 2, or take a 3 for the lead. And Jordan Clarkson provides such amazing shutdown defense that Kawhi Leonard has to give the ball up and get it passed back to him to get reset. So we all remember the shot attempt, but don't forget that the Kawhi Leonard got so shut down going left and right from Jordan Clarkson, staunch defender, that he had to pass the ball up and get the ball back, and then he was taking a drifting step back 3 off to his left. Wasn't greatly contested by Jordan Clarkson, but he was in front of him enough to force it to say, like, hey, this is going to be extremely contested unless you fall away to the left. And just great defense from him late. Only 4 of 13 from the field. He missed a lot of 2-point field goals. I don't have my shot chart in front of me right now, but a lot of them were missed layups. He got fouled a lot, wasn't called. I'm not going to... It's when I say things like, by the way, if you're new here, it's never the ref's fault. This is a pro officiating podcast. I never have a problem with the officials. You always have to perform better than the margin of error of officiating. So, but if I say things like, hey, if they don't call fouls, it's more of just like a fact of the game, right? And there can be certain individual decisions that can be worth talking about, especially reviews for flagrant fouls. Like I can be quite surprised on calls for things. I think the review process, the challenge process, is a total fucking mess, but I don't think it's the fault of the officials on the floor. For example, we saw today that Hardy challenged a John Collins foul on a Kawhi Leonard drive, and Collins played defense that in real time, as you're watching it in full-time speed, was just textbook defense. Like, you love the defense. He was straight up. His arms were like way back to the ceiling. He never had an arm touch. Like, usually you have your arms through your shoulder. You think you're straight up, but you're actually kind of a little bit down. You get contact on the arm. That's a foul. No, his arms are way back into the ceiling. But because his contest was just slightly glancing forward. I mean, glancing forward. It is very technically illegal, and well, they didn't overturn the foul call, and that was a little unfortunate. I don't think that's the official's fault. I think that's just the system that they're kind of playing in. Anyways, bring it back to Jordan Clarkson. I thought he had a very, very nice game. 6 assists, two turnovers, and I don't really fault him for his 4 of 13 from the field. 3 of 5 from 3 on a couple great, terrific attempts, including a hero one late. 4th on the minutes, Talen Horton Tucker, 10 points, 8 assists, 2 turnovers, had a foul. 3 of 10 from the field, 2 of 5 from 3. I think his 3-point stroke looks a lot better than it used to. But we'll talk about the guard lineup in a second. I am not exactly the biggest THT fan in the world. I do like his defense, and I thought today was a pretty average defensive day from him, but in a glut of guards that aren't exactly providing great defense, I think it's actually pretty quality. Kelly Olynyk, just a fantastic Kelly Olynyk game today. 4 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, he also had a nasty block today that was great, and 2 amazing clutch threes in the fourth quarter. We want to talk about clutch from Jordan Clarkson. How about the threes from Kelly Olynyk? His first one falling out of bounds in front of the Jazz bench. He gets fouled by Kawhi Leonard. They don't call the foul. He drills that three, and then he comes back after a great defensive possession by the Jazz on the semi-break, not a full fast break, but they were moving after a miss by the Clippers, and he's trailing. He gets the ball, and he does a leaning three-point shot, back-to-back three-pointer from Olynyk today. He had a couple nifty layups around the rim. His defense was adequate. He's faster than you think defensively. He really moves his feet. Really like that from him. Walker Kessler, we talked about him. No blocks, 4 rebounds today. I think we're going to have to see different opponents. We got the Suns tomorrow. They do have Yusuf Nurkic. We'll see how much Nurkic actually plays. But I'd like to think that Kessler's still probably not going to play a ton of center minutes until perhaps Monday at a game I will actually be at. I live here in Denver. They're going to play the Nuggets on Monday. You'll see me courtside here in Denver, as I always am, for when the Jazz come to town. And not quite Pat McAfee courtside, but you'll see me right next to the Jazz bench. We got Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, Zeke Naji's more of a stretch guy that Olynyk and Collins can handle, but I'm curious how they match Jokic's minutes. In the past, Quinn Snyder used to have Bojan Bogdanovic guard Jokic so that Rudy Gobert can do all the other shit, like guarding Aaron Gordon. I think guarding Aaron Gordon with Walker Kessler would probably be the move, but they play Aaron Gordon quite a bit, so we'll see how much Kessler plays on Monday. Curious to see how they deploy him against Nurkic tomorrow, because they don't exactly play a lot of backup center in Phoenix. Who I'm not even sure who their backup center is on the depth chart, but he's only playing 21 minutes today. And I do want to get to your question, Cameron. You say, do you think the uncertainty with the guard rotation is the main reason that Kessler's minutes are down? Would you be worried if Kessler's minutes continue at the 21-minute mark? So we all saw Walker Kessler last year, right? Like we know what Walker Kessler is. We know he is a potential all-defense candidate. We know he's got impressive skills around the rim, if not a great post skills. We know that he has just good quality to how he plays basketball and around the rim. Like, he can dribble a little bit. He has a little bit more feathery touch. We see that he's got enough touch to shoot a little three every once in a while. So I'm not worried if right now, in year 2 of this rebuild, Kessler's playing 20, 22, 23 minutes in these first few games. We're really trying to figure out we're still trying to answer the question that we were trying to answer last year, is who on this team is worth keeping around for the next playoff contending squad. And yeah, if you held everyone to a lie detector, Will Hardy's going to sit here and say, like, yeah, we're not going to win a championship this year, but I do want to figure out who's worth the shit on this team. And sometimes I do think, going back to your question, is I do think the uncertainty around the guard rotation and he's playing a 10-man rotation right now. That is a deep rotation. I mean, even for a regular season, usually your 10th guy is maybe a backup guard playing 6 to 8 minutes just to give a star a break. But instead, we have the guys at the end of the bench right now are playing 12 to 16 minutes. Right, you got Keontae George with 12 minutes, who frankly deserved a lot more. If you were watching George out there, you said, hey, this is a guy who, we're trying to develop this guy. He should be playing more minutes. But who are you taking them from? Ochai Agbaji, second-year player, by far and away our most sizable player, who can play in that forward position. Right, he's only playing 12 minutes today, but second-year guy with promise, and he's got that forward size. Maybe not pure 4, but a guy who can play up a position a little bit. Who are you taking these minutes from? You really do have to have these guys playing, and so the uncertainty with the guard rotation, you end up with having to play these guards more than you expect. No one's getting DNPs. I'll take you again back to last year. It was Talen Horton-Tucker and Nickeil Alexander-Walker were oscillating. They were alternating those the DNPs, right? It was Talen Horton-Tucker to start the year, and then it was Nickeil Alexander-Walker at a point. This is before the Mike Conley trade. And we had enough depth in the guard line, and throughout the roster, you had Rudy Gay taking up 12 minutes a game at the forward spot, that you didn't quite need a bunch of guard minutes. And now that you do, and they're players that you need to try playing, you need to see more than just 6 minutes out of Keontae George. Chris Dunn is good enough to play more than 8 minutes. You want to put him against in certain situations, and frankly, and we're fighting for a starting position here. The only guaranteed spot is Jordan Clarkson playing 34 minutes. Like, we know he's going to do that. And Taylor Horton-Tucker might play 12 minutes against the Nuggets. Like, the Nuggets could spin him around, and he's doesn't really have a place out there, and we need more of the chaos that Chris Dunn provides. We need more of the offensive variance that Keontae George provides. It's totally going to oscillate. And so if you really, really believe in John Collins playing 30-plus minutes, you're going to give 35 minutes to Markkanen, and Kelly Olynyk's going to play 25 minutes. It's really, really tough to find more than 25 minutes for Kessler. And it was the big reason I had him slated for 20. Like I said, I had him slated for 28 minutes for exactly this reason. And until a guard gets extricated from the rotation, that's where he's going to be. Because then you can figure out a rotation where it's like, all right, Kessler's playing these 4 stints, that's going to add up to 32 minutes. Because he plays with these guards really, really well, and he plays with Markkanen really, really well. I think it's very clear that Collins, Olynyk, and Markkanen all really play well together. I love watching the three of them play. Yes, you don't have a traditional rim protector out there, but I think their offensive fit is really good. Markkanen and Olynyk have a great vibe together. I love seeing a 4-5 pick and roll out of those guys. They started doing the 4-5 pick and roll with Olynyk and Markkanen late last year before they shut everyone down, and that looked really good. I want to see a lot more of that coming this year. And then going down, we mentioned Chris Dunn. Chris Dunn has had 2 rough games in a row. He was a +8 today, but he had some weird turnovers. He had some weird fouls. He was 0 of 2 from 3, 2 of 7 from the field overall, 1 rebound, 3 assists. Had a nasty steal that immediately turned into a turnover, which was unfortunate, led to 2 points the other way for the Clippers. He's playing, and a lot of people were clamoring for Chris Dunn to start. I was one of them. But I've always been adamant that the thing that Chris Dunn does worst among all of these players fighting for guard minutes, Clarkson, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Agbaji, Keontae George, Colin Sexton, Chris Dunn. The thing he does the worst is he does not have the shake or the first step speed to really get by an initial defender. He's more of a pace kind of dribbler where he does like play with force on that first dribble, but he's not blowing by anybody. And the problem with having a pure point guard like Dunn, who doesn't have that juice, who doesn't have that verve to really get by his initial defender without a solid screen, which, by the way, I think makes him a natural fit with Kessler because of the screening, it makes it hard for Markkanen. And it makes it hard for Collins. It makes it hard for Olynyk. It makes it hard for Jordan Clarkson. It makes it hard for these, less so Clarkson, but these other guys who are dependent threats who really need the dribble penetration and the great passing. Dunn does really well if somebody else has set up an advantage for him and he's able to get into the paint and make great passes. I think he has that ability on him. But if you tell him, like, hey, you are the point guard and you need to make a capital P play, that lack of burst and first step can really hurt him against competent defenses. And I think we saw at the tail end of last year, we're playing a lot of shit opponents that really affected him. So definitely worthy of a contract. Great defender. We're going to see great games out of Chris Dunn. This is not the end of seeing him. I would not be surprised, though, if this continues through tomorrow and the road trip and coming in and playing against the Orlando Magic next week. The Magic have a very strong guard rotation and deep guard rotation. Strong is maybe a little too strong to describe their guard rotation, but they do have a lot of guards that they do insist on playing with. Fultz and Suggs and Cole Anthony, and they haven't given any minutes yet to their lottery picks in Jet Howard and Anthony Black. But there's going to be a place for Chris Dunn to continue playing for a while. But if he continues to put up poor shooting performances, fouling out of games, and turning the ball over and not really being an effective passer, well, I'd rather have the other guy out there, Keontae George, who the rookie has... I know part of it's because the commentators are fueling it a little bit, but he has a certain pace and feel to the game that you sense through a television screen. As far as this is not a guy who's thinking. Like there are some players you watch them dribble and you can see almost like a math equation hovering over their head that they are thinking about how to pass. They are thinking about the activity that they need to be doing next. And Keontae George is all feel all the time, and that is professional NBA playing. What kind of player is he going to turn into is a big question, right? Is he going to turn into a scoring player like Colin Sexton, or is he going to turn into a real point guard? I think the possibilities are limitless. I don't think it's necessarily potential. Sometimes he doesn't immediately scream passing point guard. He's going to make those advanced reads or baiting players, and that all takes time, though. I love having an open canvas with Keontae George, that he could really be anything. And defensively, you could hear through the screen Olynyk and Kessler yelling at him it wasn't Kessler, it was Markin and Olynyk yelling at him to get in a certain position defensively. So he's still learning that, but he's playing very solid, intentional move his feet defense. Russell Westbrook drew a foul on Keontae George when Keontae George was trying to stay in front of him as Russell Westbrook was driving, and Westbrook got a little ticky-tack veteran foul call there, but I thought George played pretty adequate defense. And we'll move on to Colin Sexton. It will be the second to last guy before we get to Ochai Agbaji. Sorry, I was like, who is the 10th guy that we need to talk about? Before this season, I was like the last remaining Colin Sexton believer as a passer. I truly thought that this being Sexton's first season playing with a quality team where he's not being injury managed, then he could really flourish on learning how to play real professional NBA point guard style of play. Those Cleveland teams were total garbage, and I'm not saying the Jazz are going to be great this year. I certainly am on record of saying they very much won't be, but I thought that the coaching was quality, which it wasn't so much in Cleveland. And he's not the primary option on a solid team, that he was going to really learn how to pass the ball, play basic pick and roll, or feint defenders in, fake defenders out, guide them certain ways, make advanced passes. He has 0 assists in 2 games. Because he is rightfully hunting his own shot. Like he has the best first step on the team. He's getting to the rim. He's got a great 3-point shot. 0-2 from 3 today, but I thought they were close, good attempts. He has a great knack for scoring, 0 turnovers today. But his passing is just, it's never going to be there. And I hate saying that after 2 games, after being so confident, so confident before this season, that he had a chance of being really, really good. And he just wasn't from a playmaking, passing perspective. So I think 20 minutes is right where he belongs, and he is going to be by far and away the hardest player for Will Hardy to figure out, when do I play him on the court with these other guards. He's played with everybody. He's played with Dunn. He's played with Agbaji. He's played with George. He's played with Clarkson. I love the Clarkson-Sexton lineup. I think it's really super offensively juiced. But if he's not going to be a remotely quality passer like I thought he could be, it presents a lot of problems with the rotation. But he's too good that you can't bench him. Like he does provide real offense. He's real quality in that perspective. So, and Agbaji, just nothing to write home about. Great block today. I forget who it was he blocked. He played 12 minutes today, but he was present defensively. 0-2 from 3, but can't really blame him for things. His one bucket was a dunk off of a beautiful set from Hardy that I have never seen before. I'll probably watch it back and be like, oh, I know what play they were running. But in real time, they confused the Clippers so bad that Agbaji just ended up with a wide open dunk. Otherwise, he missed his 2 threes. And it was great to see Agbaji playing with intention and force at the end of the season last year. That's because he was asked to be like, hey, we kind of need a lot more from you because we got nobody else. He's not, in these first 2 games, he hasn't quite been a wallflower like he was his rookie year, but the ball just hasn't been able to find him. That being said, Talen Horton-Tucker he monopolizes a lot of possessions for no reason. And it has been challenging for better players to get the ball when he's playing 27 minutes. 8 great assists from Horton-Tucker today, though, and I liked his defense. 3 steals and a block from Horton-Tucker. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, I think unlike his prior years, his 3-point shot form, his shooting form, looks so much more normal now. It doesn't have a hitch in it. It's smooth. He's got a great base. His trunk is always his prior years, Horton-Tucker's shot, his trunk would just be in all sorts of different directions, and he was shooting with his long arms. And when you have those giant arms, you can really end up slingshotting the ball or catapulting the ball. And now every time he shoots a 3, he's got a great base, and it's really making his shoot form has a nice tucked in shooting form that is fluid without a hitch. So I'm a believer that Horton-Tucker actually might have a 3-point shot this year. He is, what did he have the first game? He was 50% from 3 in the first game. I think it was 2 of 4, or was it 1 of 2? 2 of 4, yeah. So he is now 4 of 9 from 3 on the season. I really like his shooting form, what's going on right now. So that was a lot of talking. If you're watching on YouTube, happy to take any questions y'all have. I love chatting about this Jazz team. We got a lot of comments going on Twitter and talking about the game and everything. If you want to come in, have a beer, happy to have you. I just ran through every player on the team. I gotta have a beer after this one now, though, man. Woo, we're having a good time today. Wow. First Jazz win of the season, and I am just ecstatic. Also, Pat McAfee sitting courtside had a great time tonight, it looked like. And I'm pretty neutral on Pat McAfee. I don't watch his show. I think he's it's a little too bombastic for me. As I sit here drinking beers on a Friday night on the internet at 11 o'clock. But I do think he brings the right amount of energy wherever he goes. I think he brings in the right kind of people usually. And he was courtside today sitting next to Ryan Smith. He brought some great energy today. So. Where do we go from here? Check out the advanced stats here. Let's bring up clean the glass. Like I mentioned, the offensive rebounding. The Clippers rebounded. They got offensive rebounds on 18.4% of their own misses. That would have ranked in the 9th percentile last year. Anything below 25% is really, really good. Anything below 20% is tops in the league. And that wasn't the Jazz last year. The Jazz would give up offensive rebounds left and right all the time. And so, yeah, only giving up 18.4% offensive rebounds are great. The Jazz finished with a 38.9% offensive rebound percentage, but I do think that was a little bit of artificially juiced with some of the tapping that went on. Normal turnover percentage from the team. And the Clippers, they had a fabulous effective field goal percentage of 62.3%. That was buoyed by Paul George going 15 of 15 from the free throw line, which that's always going to help your effective. Effective. I'm sorry. That would be true shooting percentage. I'm sorry. That calculated into free throws. So, that must have meant they shot pretty well from... Yeah, so they went 14 of 35 from three. Only 35 three-point shots, though, not so bad. But they did shoot 53% from field goal attempts. That's actually quite high. And with 35 out of 77 field goal attempts being three-point shots, makes it so that they have a pretty high effective field goal percentage. Utah shooting 52.6% effective field goal percentage. As I mentioned, that they had a pretty good three-point shooting today, 16 of 41 from three, and they really struggled in the paint today. I mentioned Clarkson struggles, Chris Dunn had some struggles in the paint, Colin Sexton missed a few in the paint, and John Collins had a couple misses in the paint. So you end up with a fairly pedestrian two-point shooting average, but they had a good enough three-point shooting average so that they had a nice average shooting day and also shooting 20 of 22 from the free throw line. Only 14 turnovers for the Jazz, not the best amount, but it's totally normal, can totally live with that. Great. Overall, ends up being a great offensive day for both teams. 122.4 points per possession, points per 100 possessions, and 119.2 points per 100 possessions for the Clippers. That ends up being totally adequate. Jazz shoot 34% at the rim, 22% from short mid-range. Those aren't scintillating numbers. The Clippers shot only 26% at the rim today. That is a surprising figure to watch. So J-Mac suggests that's more why Kessler's minutes are down. It's early, but Collins is up in the mid-30s because he's juicing the rebounding. I think Collins' rebounding, compared to last year, right? So we're starting, last year had lineups of Jared Vanderbilt, Kelly Olynyk, and Lauri Markkanen. That was the three. So Collins comes in for Jared Vanderbilt, right? That's the most notable substitution. Kessler now starts over Olynyk, but with Olynyk playing more minutes today than Kessler, I really do think they're fairly interchangeable as far as who starts or not. So Collins has established himself as just, we already knew this, but he's a far superior player to Jared Vanderbilt in many ways. But when it comes to rebounding, Jared Vanderbilt's stats, they're all fake. If you watch any of my postcasts from last year, I'm very adamant that everything about Jared Vanderbilt and what he does on the court is completely fake. It's not real. The rebounding is actually not as good as you think. He doesn't have the world's best rebounding percentage. He's a kind of an intriguing offensive rebounder because he will just fly in out of nowhere and get an incredible rebound. He might even get 3 amazing rebounds a game. He will dive on the floor for a steal. But then at the end of the day, you watch him play after play after play, and you look at the final stats for him, and he's got 8 rebounds in 36 minutes, and he had 4 fouls, and the defensive rating when he was on the floor was in the absolute fucking toilet, and he shot 1 of 3 from the field because he can't finish at the rim and he can't shoot threes. We knew he couldn't shoot threes, but I think everyone realized, like, oh, he can't shoot at the rim either. And that always presented a problem. And Collins is everything better than that. He's a real rebounder. He is not just flying in out of nowhere to get a tough offensive rebound. He is always in position and skying for rebounds as a true power forward. It's really, really, really helpful. So why can't Collins and Kessler play together? Can't they really complement each other? And J-Mac, as I was suggesting earlier, that it's less about Collins not being able to play with Kessler. I do think, like, in between Markkanen, Kessler, Olynyk, and Collins, right? Those 4 players, if you had to say, like, there's 96 minutes available for you. Also, with Markkanen playing the 3 half the time, let's add another 24 minutes. So that's 96, 120 minutes for 4 players. You don't think they can average 30 minutes a game apiece, right? You take 5 more minutes for Markkanen, and you take 5 away from Olynyk. You still get 30 minutes for Collins, 30 minutes for Kessler. You give 3 more to Collins, take 3 away from Kessler. You get 33 Collins, 27 Kessler. That's not 21 minutes, though. And I did predict that Kessler would average 28 minutes a game this year. And it's all because that there's a lot of minutes that have to be given to this guard glut. And when you have to end up playing 3 guards, so 4 guards at one point in the Kings game, sometimes it's not always other guards that will suffer those minutes, especially because the back end of the rotation, like Keontae George and Chris Dunn, they're not 6-minute-a-game players. Like, you watch some of these other, if you look at these other 10-man rotations that get deployed in the regular season, these guys at the end of the bench, like, they average 8 minutes, 6 minutes, just to give a star a break. Maybe it's a star point guard who plays 38 minutes, and you kind of cobble together who finishes those other 10 minutes at the point guard spot. But Keontae George has already established, like, no, that guy needs to play minimum 12 minutes, right? He played 6 minutes in the second, 6 minutes in the fourth today. He definitely was probably worthy of more than that. Chris Dunn, worthy defender, great playmaker. He's got his deficiencies, but he got to play him 15 minutes. Agbaji was really low today with only 12 minutes, just because there really wasn't a place for him today, because there wasn't a lot of players his size to guard, right? Like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are far too tall for someone like Agbaji, so he's only playing 12 minutes. But 12 minutes is a minimum. And so you start calculating like all these minutes, and you don't want to take anything away from Collins, Markkanen, or even Olynyk at this point. And then you kind of start thinking like, we can probably survive without Kessler playing these minutes. So it's a combination of Collins being a little bit better than we thought. A lot of people were very optimistic. I was very neutral about John Collins. And I do think the jury is still out that John Collins is going to average 34, 35 minutes a game. He's a worthy starter, and he's figuring out how to play with all these different guards. But we've seen it in the past that John Collins can randomly show up one day and the coaches decide he's going to play 21 minutes. He's not so much of a star that you're like, oh, I got to have John Collins out there. And if Kessler is a totally reasonable, sensible matchup against someone like Nikola Jokic on Monday, where John Collins would frankly be food against Nikola Jokic. Not saying Kessler would be much better, but at least you have the size and you're trying to give Kessler that sort of experience. It could really oscillate from time to time, but I do think that the reason you can't give both of those guys, I mean, ideally you're giving both of those guys 33, 34 minutes, right? Like, I would love a front court rotation as I just described. You get Kelly Olynyk 22 minutes, right? He's getting up there in age. You don't want to overtax him, and he fits well with a lot of people. Love him coming off the bench. So if he's got 24 minutes, then you can give 32, 33 minutes to all of Markkanen, Kessler, and John Collins. But the reason you can't do this is because you don't have enough minutes because of all this other shit happening in the backcourt. You don't have enough minutes to play. You end up having to play Talen Horton-Tucker at the 3 instead of Lauri Markkanen, right? You end up with a lot of that type of situation. So it's a lot of talk about how this rotation is going to really sort itself out with Collins and Kessler, but I think we got to see the Jazz play against more opponents to see exactly what Hardy's intent is here. There was a little less zone play today. Kessler was a very poor zone defender on Wednesday, and they didn't play a lot of zone. Well, they played a little bit, but they didn't play as much zone today, and he still wasn't out there for as much as we would think. So, a little interesting. So, this has been an hour that we've been live talking about the Jazz first win of the season. I'm going to have a few more sips of beer. If you're in the Twitter spaces, if you're on YouTube, you want to drop a comment, question, whatever, I will always take it. From there, I'm going to sip my beer and catch up on some of these comments we got going on, and I hope you all very much enjoyed this first victory. I'm so happy right now. Jeremy Cameron, J-Mac, thank you for joining the live chat. Always love having folks in YouTube dropping comments. We'll probably release this as a podcast as well. It's kind of a live show, but maybe you're commuting, you kind of like listening to it. Oh, I took notes today, too. Colin Sexton did force an 8-second call against Paul George today. It's that classic, like, once-a-week amazing defensive moment from Colin Sexton that makes us think, oh, he's a pretty good defender, but then you watch him just get blown by over and over again. But it's a fun thing. Love those Kelly Olynyk threes today. The tough finish over Kawhi, and then he did it again on the semi break. Keontae George, I mentioned he got 6 minutes in the second quarter. That's normal, but when the going got tough in the fourth quarter, you still had Keontae George playing his 6 minutes in the fourth. I think that's a great show of confidence, and he looked great out there. I really liked watching him. The team was really struggling defensively for him, and it really wasn't his fault, and he finished -3. There were a lot of defensive mistakes played when he was on the court that weren't his fault, and I thought that was interesting. We thought that the closing lineup was going to be Chris Dunn, Jordan Clarkson, Olynyk, Markkanen, and Collins, but Dunn got his 6th foul, and THT finished up the game. Chris Dunn also, I forgot this part too. At the end of the game, Chris Dunn took 2 contested floaters over Kawhi Leonard. They both missed. And it's just like he was I mentioned the lineup there. He's playing with Clarkson, Olynyk, Markkanen, and John Collins. At that stage in the game, this game was close in the fourth, really, really, really tight in the fourth quarter. You cannot have possessions ending with a Chris Dunn contested floater over Kawhi fucking Leonard of all people. J-Mac, you bring up a fantastic point. I brought it up earlier as well. Is like you also had Plumlee and Zubats combining for 31 minutes. Right, so Zubats starting, only playing 19 minutes, Plumlee playing 12 minutes off the bench. Like, he was definitely trying to stress test the Jazz, but unlike Jazz teams of prior years, the Jazz said, fine, we'll just play Olynyk, Markkanen, and Collins instead, who are a lot more mobile than Kessler, and if you want to play Nikola Batum at the 5, well, he's old and slow now, and we're going to destroy you offensively. And that's exactly what they did. By the way, on the other side of the court, Norm Powell remains one of my favorite players. He had 2 points in the first half, 18 points in the second half. I want James Harden to get traded to the Clippers because I hate the Clippers. Like, whatever, I don't really care about them. But I would love to see Philly have a player like Norm Powell to really suss out the Maxey, Melton, and Powell. Like, that backcourt rotation would be really solid playing alongside Joel Embiid. Powell is a really, really good three-point shooter and defender, and I hate watching him in LA. I want him to be on like a cool, good team. Which I think the Sixers without Harden would be a cool, good team. I would love to see Norman Powell doing that. And wow, just the defense by Jordan Clarkson. We'll finish with an ode to Jordan Clarkson. I just 3 years ago, we get Jordan Clarkson December of 4 years ago, right? Yeah, Jazz trade for Clarkson. This was in... When was this? Was 2019, wasn't it? How come we can't find a date on the Clarkson trade? So the Jazz trade for Clarkson, I'm going to say it's 2019. Yeah, December 2019. I don't know why it took me a while to figure that out. So the Jazz trade for Jordan Clarkson. And that season was fun, right? Like the 2019 season pre-COVID. Or it was COVID. It was the season that got shortened by COVID. And then moved to the bubble. It was fun. And it was fun watching Jordan Clarkson do Jordan Clarkson things. I kind of knew what he was from LA and Cleveland. It was kind of like, are we really trading for this guy? Like, what is he? And then he had the style, he had the flair. It was like, this was cute. He wore 00. That was the season we wore those Blue Mountain uniforms too. I think his very first game was in the 90s Blue Mountain uniforms, which is pretty sweet. Mm-hmm. And then the next couple years, it was just really, really, really frustrating. And just the defensive lapses, his offensive, controlling the ball all the time and making hero ball decisions and not having great vision. Loved his off-the-court persona. I loved who he was as a person. But he was just so frustrating to watch. And if you told me that right now I would be so adamant that he is the hero of who this Jazz team embodies, his spirit and his energy, I would have thought you were crazy. I was like, he's just a bench gunner. Who gives a shit? But sometimes it's not about player quality all the time. Bleep blorp, look at numbers on a screen. As fans, we look for more than that. Yeah, we want a championship. Yeah, we want wins. Yeah, and a lot of the times the numbers on the court are what get you there. But you also have to enjoy things along the way. And Jordan Clarkson provides that joy. And I hope he's on the next playoff team where he plays 12 minutes off the bench, or maybe he keeps this up forever and he's playing this kind of quality basketball at 35, 36. He's already 31 years old. It's nights like tonight where he provides that unbelievable three-point shot, which he absolutely can make, and you rely on him for those types of tough shots against a quality defensive team in the Clippers and the defense he was facing. He still drilled that three to take a 2-point lead, and then he picked it up defensively with just great feet, moving his feet left to right. And I don't know if this is a thing that's going to stick. I don't really give a shit, but just that sort of energy and vibes, and then we can walk home tonight saying we got to win because of Jordan Clarkson again and again and again and again. I love that. It makes me feel good. It makes me happy as a fan, and I'm so happy that Jordan Clarkson is a Jazz man. I never thought I would have said that 3 years ago. So, this has been the Salt City Hoops Live postcast. I'm so happy you joined us. Catch you on the next one. Don't know if we'll do tomorrow. We won't be able to do Monday because I will be at the Nuggets game. But we'll try to do another one soon. Next week sometime. I'll be on Twitter, Salt City Hoops, Mark R. Pereira. You can find me, and we'll chat on Twitter tomorrow. Maybe we'll go live. Probably not. But we'll see what happens. Until then, y'all have a great night. I'm gonna go have a couple more beers and celebrate this win. I don't think we got any other games still on right now because the Jazz had a little bit later of a start today, so I don't think we have any games on right now to catch up on. So I think we're going to kick our feet up and have a great night. Thanks for watching. Salt City Hoops Live postcast. Catch you around.